What up, cut up? Welcome to A Poor Excuse for a Podcast. I am Nathan McDougall, author of A Poor Excuse for a Book, a collection of short stories from a relatively unknown author of mediocre skill. I am the unknown author. The mediocre skills are mine. And today you are joining us on one of my favorite chapters, Like a Punch to the Face. And joining us today, along with you, is my brother from another mother, Trace.
What up, what up?
And my sister from the same mother and same father and all of that, Tasha.
How you guys doing?
And today we got a real good episode. Gonna discuss some real embarrassing stuff on my part, but at the same time it'll be a good conversation. So, stay with us, come back, and thanks for coming.
Every time we link up, it's a hit. And every time we pull up, what's up? We with the shit. And every time we roll up, it's the spliff. Niggas try to hold up, you getting hit. Bite. Don't take it personally, this may not work for you. I keep that burner with me, might end up hurting you. Physically, I ate the track. Verbally, I state the facts. Herbally, I smoke the best. Change the game, keep the rest. Money make a mindset. Penny to a dime set. Flip a Michael Kors from a motherfucking time mix. Hustle, that's my name.
Thank you. Welcome back to A Poor Excuse for a Podcast. Today we are discussing the chapter Like a Punch to the Face. And so to dive right into everything, this particular chapter is about when I was 8-9 years old, and believe it or not, I had a bully. Not only did I have a bully, I had a bully that was half my size and in an all-black neighborhood, a white kid. So the smallest white kid in the neighborhood was waxing me on the regular. I'm sorry. So this particular chapter is all about that. I think it was just like over one span of a summer or what have you. But to recap the whole story in case you haven't read it, which is, you can go back and read it later. So we were living in Litton Apartments in East Nashville. I don't know if you remember Litton Apartments. Did you?
I remember something like it.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I think so.
Okay. So you barely remember Litton. So Litton Apartments in East Nashville. And I don't know why this kid was just targeting me as to take out all his anger and frustration. And me, I was always a quiet kid, very non-confrontational, very just very standoffish, quiet. I sit and observe and watch and listen long before I start talking, and probably carried myself, no doubt, as if I had low self-image or walked with my head down. I don't know. Everything I did, everything you needed to do to make yourself a target to someone, to give off a vibe of come terrorize me. And so he did. And so like 3 or 4 times I remember we were neighborhood kids standing around talking. He come up, push me down, pop on me, pow, and I'm scrambling. I'm like just moving backwards, like, oh please, like just horrible all around the board. And it's kind of in a sense of, I mean, I guess I don't know if it's just being kids or not kind of knowing your own power or whatever the case may be, right? And kind of putting yourself within a cage or a box and allowing other people to treat you however they want. So, okay, tough to admit, got to swallow all pride here. I'm getting waxed, getting beat up regularly from a little kid, half my size, until I'm in Litton. I'm living with my mom. We're in our apartment complex, and my cousins come by. Now it's a different ball game because my cousins are around, and me and my cousin DJ are walking to the store. And we live in like probably the center of the apartment complex. You got to walk up a small hill and you cut through this little grassy, like wooded area to get to like a local convenience store. And so me and my cousin, we walk down to this store. We're on our way back to the apartment. We got big 2-liter drinks in our hands, and we talking about whatever 9-10-year-old talks about. And as I'm coming out of like the little wooded area into the actual apartment complex, there is the kid that has been bullying me. Oddly enough, his name was Nathaniel. My name is Nathan. His name was Nathaniel. He's standing there with like his it's not even his side. I don't know if he was the sidekick or the other guy was the sidekick, but he's standing there with his homeboy, and I'm like, oh man, I got my cousin. He finna try to embarrass me. I cannot be embarrassed in front of my cousin. So I just been like acting so terrified of this kid all summer or however long this little time period was. But then when I'm coming up out of the little wooded area, about to walk into the apartment complex, he's standing there not saying anything. He's just standing. And I just remember it all so clearly. He got blonde hair. He got a little rat tail, because you know we was all poor, because that's the only time they got the little rat tail here. And he just standing there not saying nothing. And then I'm like trying to play it tough. Go and get out of my way, Nathan. I don't feel like being bothered with you today. No, every other day I didn't feel like being bothered either, but I just, just took them licks like a jerk. And he don't say nothing. I go to step around him. He steps, back to the side to block my path. So I'm like, shit, my cousin is behind me. He don't know what's going on. Look, this is all I got is how my family views me, because I moved around a lot as a kid, so I'm never in one neighborhood too long, making like a bunch of friends and staying with them. I never go to the same school like 2 years in a row at this point in time. And so I'm like, I cannot lose face in front of my cousin. So he goes to step in front of me. I go to step around him, he steps in front of me, and then without thinking, without nothing, I just drop the drink. Wow! Hit him square in the eye. Just boom, like lightning. It come out of nowhere. It happened so quick. He's stunned. I barely even remember it happening. I just remember popping on him. And then he just standing there still like, oh, what just happened? And then I bend down to pick up my cold drink, and then I just walk on down the apartment complex. And he just still standing there, just like, what happened? And then later on, that same day, me and my cousins are in our building in the hallway, playing, talking, making up dances or something. And he lives in the actual same building as me, on the same floor. I live on one end of the hallway. He lives all the way on the other end of the hallway. And it's some other stuff I'm leaving out. But he comes out of his apartment, jogs up the hallway, shakes my hand, and then jogs back into his apartment, closes the door. And I never see him again until like years and years later. And by then, like, we're older and the moments have, passed. And
Do you still have the rat tail on the back of his head?
did he still have the rat tail when I seen him years later? Probably. He probably did. I don't remember. But as a recap, that is like a punch to the face. And which brings us to today's conversation is that story in itself and the bigger issue of bullying and how kids handle bullies or should handle bullies, or was my approach correct or incorrect? And like I said, some bunch of other details in the story, but you got to read it to get those details, and then but we'll discuss from here. So I'm gonna start with Tasha. What did you think of that particular story as you were reading it, and kind of what thoughts does it bring to mind in general?
It just kind of makes me think about stuff that Daddy used to tell us about whenever we would get messed with by somebody at school. He loves bringing up stories about him and Troy doing stuff when they were teenagers and in high school. And he always talked about how he had people messing with him, and he had people always in his face and always getting on his nerves and stuff like that. But it wasn't until he stood up for himself, which in your case, similar to this, he didn't necessarily punch him in the mouth or nothing like that, but just like, roughed him up, grabbed hold of him, shook him, just got back in their face, kind of pushed that same energy back out, and that's when they left him alone. So I think hearing that is kind of like a breaking point. Like, you don't really make that person stop until you've really had enough, and then they see that as you being a threat, not necessarily competition, because like you said, you were just quiet, timid, stay to yourself in the corner. People see you as an easy target because you didn't talk to anybody, and that's kind of how I was in high school. I didn't talk to anybody, so that made me a target to be messed with. But once you reach your breaking point, they realize, oh, well, you can't really, say nothing to him because he's kind of, you don't know what he's capable of doing. You know what I'm saying? He could really do some damage to you if you're not careful. Right. And that's what'll make them fall back and be like, oh, well, maybe I should just leave this guy alone. And then, I mean, you don't never mess with a quiet kid in class anyway because they're always like suspect. But in this case, it was just you having enough of being messed with on a regular basis, and he probably got a little bit of respect for you also for standing up for yourself. Because it's like you said, he was half your size, so it's like, why is this dude letting me do this to him every single day? Like, why aren't you trying to stop me? You're not going to stop me. I'm going to keep doing it. Right. So it wasn't until you stopped him that he was like, okay, well, I guess I can't mess with him anymore. So it's like, my fun is over with. The game is completed. Right. I lost, and it's over with. It is what it is. So, I mean, I don't think you acted irrationally. I think you did what you were supposed to do.
Okay. Thank you. Very well thought out, well developed thought that you brought.
You make me sick.
Very long lasting.
You asked me what I thought.
No, you're right. I did ask you, and I thank you, and I appreciate it. And Tracy, I go to you.
I thought it was a dope short story. It was a short story, it's a couple pages. What I liked about it was it kind of touched on the small triumphs that you go through and the small hills that you have to face. That you may not, reflect on unless it's written like this in a book. And you can look back on it and say, you know what? Well, I realized me doing that, I probably reached a new or found new personality traits, or I found something out new about myself that I didn't have before. Because that was the reason I was reserved. Also, I was never scared or timid, but it was definitely always reserved. It's just because I think some of it is just having a fear of what you're capable of and the ramifications for going to a point that you may not be able to return from. Right, I don't know how young you were. Right. I don't know if those thoughts ever crept through your head, but for me, I was always taken up for people who was picked on. Yeah. So that's just the role I played in my life. And besides that, I never would be aggressive or anything unless I'm playing sports or something like that. But yeah, some of the thoughts that came through my head when I was reading that, I started to think about, okay, I wonder where was a part where I may have been getting picked on, whether it's physically or mentally, or it's just someone doing something to me, and I felt like I couldn't do anything or I shouldn't do anything. Yeah. And then what happened? What happened when I did do something? Right. And what changed me after that? Right. So I appreciated the story, just because it took me down that type of road. Yeah. So when you actually punched him, it was, to me, I thought to myself, okay, he did that, and so I couldn't wait to see his reaction. Yeah. What's his name again?
Nathaniel.
I don't know. I couldn't wait to read what you were going to say about his reaction. Yeah. So when you showed his reaction, I was like, okay, that's just about right. Yeah. How bullies react once you step up to him and say, no, this is going to happen as much as it used to be.
Definitely.
It's almost like, I'll let you play around, and because at the end of the day, I think it's a noble person understands that just because you can beat up someone or do something to someone, it's not necessarily necessary. Right.
Doesn't mean you should. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right. And I lived through that a lot, especially since I would always pick up for people who couldn't pick on the bullies who when they did what they did. Right. Even then, I would sometimes feel bad because I'm like, man, I could. This is. Yeah, it's no challenge. Yeah. So
I could break you off.
Right. Exactly. So you're scared now. Right. Good. Stop. Leave them alone now. I'll go about my business.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I think kind of to both of your points is specifically what you were saying is you kind of after triumphs like that or small triumphs like that, you learn about yourself things that you did not know before. Right. And there was, as I was writing and rewriting and kind of revisiting those memories, it was a lot of understanding that I gained then and even that I gained now. And I think I was watching like a science fiction show. It's actually called Fallen Skies. I don't know if y'all remember that. It's like about an alien invasion. And they were trying to fight these aliens off. and like the main character was a history teacher, and he was relating their fights with the aliens to, you know, wars, specifically the American Revolution. And he was saying that the only thing you need to do to defeat an invading force, you do not have to eliminate each one of them. You do not have to crush them. You just have to make it cost more for them to keep fighting than it does to not fight.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have to make it not worth it for them to come at you.
Right.
And now being a father, kind of taking that own thing from my own youth and growing up and encountering bullies here and there, you know, particularly in this story, and just in every form, oftentimes you have to show that bully that if you're going to come here, I'm going to show you that it is not worth the time that you are going to spend, the time and anguish and pain that you will receive in retribution to think that you can terrorize. Like, it's just not going to be worth it. You balance the scales in that way. And oftentimes all that means is if you stand up for yourself, they'll feel like, man, I can go find an easier target, or I'm just going to chill. And and that's kind of what came about in that particular instance.
If I could introduce a perspective, because you mentioned in the story how you tried to make peace with him at one point, and that didn't work. Because some people would argue, well, why don't you try being this friend? Why don't you try getting to know him? Why don't you, you know what I'm saying, go the nice route? But you tried that, and it didn't work.
I did. I tried to be friends with them, which is odd. Even now, I'm like, even now looking back on that time, I'm so ashamed of myself for letting so much ride and slide. Like, why did you let him do that? You should have just popped it out from the beginning. You would have ended it so much quicker. But hindsight is 20/20. Retrospect, you see everything clearly. And as a kid or just as a person, when things first happen, sometimes you're so surprised and taken aback that you don't react like you always say you will react, or you think you might react. So as it was happening, I don't know, I was just kind of caught up in it and just allowing it to happen to me. And at a certain point, I did try to make friends with him. I invited him to my house to eat. The night my mama made hamburger helper, cheeseburger macaroni. This was the finest hamburger helper on the market. I invite him over. My mom like reluctantly says yeah. He in my house at my table eating up all my cheeseburger macaroni, and I'm thinking, we're gonna be all good after this, and we were not. And so I probably really channeled that cheeseburger macaroni moment when we finally had that face off. But you're right. Some people cannot be acquiesced or appeased or reasoned with.
And that leads something to the second part, though. What's going on with him at home?
It's a very good point.
Right, where, you know, he feel like he needs to terrorize you specifically.
It's a very good point.
You're bigger and all these things. And does he feel like he's finding a triumph in some way that at home he may be being treated like the peasant or you know, whoever's the victim.
Or maybe when he is at home, he does that to his younger siblings. Like, he terrorizes them, and he just thinks he can do it to anybody out in the street because that's what he's used to. It can go either way, but
I often imagine, though, it goes the first way of, if you are being mistreated, if you are put in a position where you have no power, the moment that you can go out and grasp power and have it over somebody else or dominate over somebody else, you do it as a way to kind of make up for all the times that you felt like nothing. I'm going to go make somebody else feel like nothing. Now I feel like everything.
But if that were the case, then why did he, like, I'm not going to say congratulate lightly, like, but why did he, like, give you your props for finally standing up for yourself when you did, if that were the case? Because usually that would evoke more aggression and anger. Now he'd be ready to fight you because it's like, you shouldn't be fighting me back. I'm supposed to be dominating over you. You're not supposed to be an equal opponent to me in any way. If that was the,
I think that's where fantasy meets reality. In the fantasy, he is like, I am the powerful one. I'm doing the dominating now. When, I mean, I don't know the dude's situation. Like, he could have been abused at home, and when he was there, he's powerless and nothing. But now when he can go outside and find this kid that's meek and timid and you know what I mean, quiet and to themselves, now he can be powerful. But then when you know the one that he's taking advantage of rises up and you know smacks him in the mouth, he's like, you know, well that fantasy is over with. Like, you know.
That seems to be the case more times than not. There usually is some type of abuse or whatnot.
Yeah.
Of course, at 35 years old, while reading this book, I'm thinking that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure at 24 years old, reading this book, I'm like, man, I can't wait to the part where you.
Yeah.
where it's time to get solid. So.
Yeah. So it was interesting. I actually originally wrote that story out in college for like an expository writing class. And I don't know what made me tap into it then, but I did. And then when it came time for a poor excuse for a book, and I was like going through those memories, I came back to this and refined it and added in more details and things like that. So it was an interesting one to revisit, and it was a moment in time where I had to be very honest with myself, because most people don't want to admit that they were ever in a position of weakness, or they allowed themselves to be taken advantage of, or they were, at the bottom of the totem pole. But, the reality of the situation is that that's how it all played out up until I said, this has to stop.
So just to shift gears ever so slightly, the fact that you are a father now, you have a son, what would you say to him if he was ever put in a situation like this?
Well, me and my son actually have already discussed. We discussed when school first started. I gave him a very simple, very easy to understand, as well as to relate to others, 3-strike rule. Okay. So, strike one, somebody is in your face, messing with you, trying to belittle you, trying to humiliate you. And of course, I adjust the language so he understands exactly what I mean. Somebody's trying to bully you, or they're messing with you, or they're touching you. You tell them, like, hey, I don't know what you got going on. I don't know what's wrong, but stop, because I don't like it. Right? You tell them. That's
very
strike
clear,
one.
Straightforward.
I don't like what you're doing. I don't like what's going on. You need to chill. That's strike one. If they continue, you tell an adult. Now, we tell kids to tell adults, but it's never as simple as you go over to the adult and you say they didn't, they wave you off, or the kid catch you telling the adult, so now they say, oh, you try to tell on me, I'm really finna get you now. Or the teacher listens, they only barely part way address it, or they put both of you to blame. You tell a kid to tell an adult, and it actually can make it worse on the kid. So I tell him, you tell an adult, but you tell them, as in you say, hey, Miss Henrietta, you need to get so-and-so because he keep doing this, and if you don't stop him, I will stop him. He has my permission to tell the teacher, if you don't address it, I'm going to address it.
Right.
My daddy told me, if you don't address it, then I can address it. So that's
that's
strike
gonna
two.
make them stop.
You tell an adult, and you tell them in that way, if you do not do something, then I will do something. He's like, okay. So then strike 3 is, after that, if they continue, you give them one last chance, and you tell them, if you do not stop, I am going to break you off. Period. You let them know the exact consequences of these actions, and if they go for strike number 4, they are already struck out, and you wax them. That's it. Period. And
sounds good to me.
He has never got, suspended for fighting. I do not encourage fighting, but I also, he cannot allow himself to be bullied.
But at that point, it's not even fighting. Position. It's more of defending yourself.
It is self-defense.
Because if you are giving you warning after warning after warning, you've done everything that you're supposed to do, and they still won't leave you alone, then you're just defending yourself. Like, that's what that is.
Now you have to show them that they have, bitten off more than they can chew, and it's not going to be worth it to continue to harass you.
But I think when it comes to teachers not doing anything, they make such a big deal about bullying now versus, I think, when all of us were in grade school. Like, it's such a huge deal, but I still don't think that they're doing enough about it. Like, as far as stopping it before it starts. Because a lot of this stuff is easily preventable, but they just don't think that it's that big of a deal, especially when it comes to little boys. Yeah. They just think that that's what they're supposed to do, but it's.
Sidebar: my super late brother is here. I'm about to bully him.
Oh my god!
Later on. So Pardon that interruption as I dunk his head in the toilet. It was swirly in a wedgie, atomic wedgie. But atomic wedgie. But but no, Tasha, I think once again we segue now into bullying as it is seen and as it is right now is a very big deal. Every year Ethan goes to school. I see the little signs: no bullying, don't tolerate, don't turn.
If you see something,
say something. Exactly. So, and as you were saying, versus when we were younger versus now, it seems like bullying has become a very, very big deal, especially with the rise of social media and what do they call it? Digital online bullying.
Cyberbullying.
Cyberbullying. So, and then I also saw very recently a young boy was being bullied, and what they did caused brain damage.
Oh wow!
And I think they were choking him. It was two. They showed the videos. Two big kids get off a bus, and one smaller kid is kind of trying to scramble away. He's really minding his business, just moving, and they rush him and they pin him up against a wall. And I guess he's his forearm is on his windpipe. He can't breathe, and he ends up having a seizure.
Oh wow!
And then I think it has some long lasting effects, and then the mother ends up suing the school. So in my particular situation, fortunately, I've always been on the larger side. I've always been tall. I ain't always been this wide, but I've always been tall and rather stocky. So if I was being bullied, I was actually allowing someone to bully me, and I wasn't cognizant of my own power or influence, or you know what I mean. I was not establishing my boundaries properly. But some kids do not have that advantage. They are not big.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Most that are being bullied do not.
Yeah, and they are smaller kids who actually cannot, properly or truly defend themselves. If the bully wants to bump down on them, there's not too much that they can do. So what do you say to that? How do you advise that kid who is up against odds that are not in his favor?
Well, in a situation like that, they sound like they were out for blood. No one just decides in the moment to choke somebody out. And I don't know what
Kids can be.
I don't know what motive or reason you would have to ever do that. This person couldn't have done nothing to hurt you personally. There's no way that they can really hurt you that severely that you have to hurt them even more severely in a physical way. But I mean, and that's how you lead to school shootings or people committing suicide or you take out a vengeful hatred for somebody just because. I mean, sometimes, and that's why it's such
the
a
bullies
big deal.
do it because they can. That's the whole thing. Is what Tracy was saying. You shouldn't do things just because you can, and sometimes these kids do it just because they can. Were you about to present? You were about to say something?
Yeah. I was gonna say no. I truly believe that probably the vast majority of bullying in general, just over the whole landscape, and adults, kids, whatever, is due to upbringing in general.
Yeah,
because
I think so too.
only just because of how the mind works when it comes to transgressions and putting your self projections on everybody else.
Right.
Whether that's being beat at home or just not being listened, whatever it is that they feel, whatever that reason is that they feel to be inferior at home or in an everyday setting for them.
Right.
That's the I guess that's the only, not only setting, but that is a more common setting for those type of emotions to manifest for a bully and to go outward amongst the world who don't have no control over them. So I think that does play probably the biggest part. And when you say there was no reason why they did that, they did it just because they could and just because they felt like it's about time to just rough up little buddy. And see, and for me, I never understood that because obviously I'm going to go over to this person who cannot defend themselves. Yeah. So for me, there was no fun in that. I immediately saw their pain and their fear. So I didn't think that was funny or cute or anything. So I never understood it. That's probably why Willow was big to jump on the bullies for that. And I remember this one guy, his funny I don't know if you ever see this, but his name is. He went to Park Avenue in West Nashville.
Okay.
I literally, when I saw Urkel,
Yeah.
I have every right to think that they got Urkel's character
From him.
comic book.
Okay. Yeah.
From the voice to the glasses to the tape in the middle of his glasses, from his suspenders.
So he was a stereotype.
Wow.
I mean, no, he was just a nerdy guy, which is fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
But I remember him being bullied, walking up and down West Skyview Hill.
Yeah.
By house.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Easily climbed Harry when I saw him bullying. But anyway, and just to see his face when somebody was taking up for him, I would do that 1,000 times.
Right.
Because he was just like, he was so taken back to someone, taking up for him.
Yeah,
and
going to bat for him, vouching for him, and like interceding on his behalf.
Right. And so I don't know if he'll ever remember me or
Yeah.
ever, but for me that was so valuable, and that was the biggest lesson I learned when it comes to dealing with bullies in my life was Lawrence, just because he was just the face of, hey,
Yeah.
I'm literally about to draw up this schematics on this geometry situation.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
are you picking on me?
Right. All I want to do is math.
Right, but Harry at home,
Yeah.
he was getting it.
Yeah.
And every day, and I remember coming to his aid for his own family, and he was getting it at home, and me and him had good conversations at a young age, probably pre-teens. Oh no, it was before that. About it, and when I saw him and Harry, he's 6'3", 250 in sixth grade or something, whatever it was. So for him, when I saw him break down, and that's when I started to understand that it really didn't matter. He was just taking all his transgressions on little Lawrence.
That's deep. That's very deep. And so there's also two sides to it, as we've kind of been saying. There is the person that is bullied, and then there is the bully. And oftentimes we just do the sitcoms and television. We write the bully off as like a bad egg or a bad apple. But kind of like what we've been getting to is they are probably going through something, and as a child they know no other way to deal with it than to try to take back power by taking it away from somebody else. And some kids are just spoiled. They like attention. They're afraid, so they project their make someone else afraid so they feel less afraid. They don't, and when I say afraid, they don't want to, afraid of being embarrassed, afraid of being rejected, afraid of people not liking them. So they terrorize someone else to, get away from that fear themselves and put it on to someone else. So then the issue also becomes is, where are these bullies coming from?
Exactly.
And a big thing for me is for my kid not to be bullying nobody else. Like, you don't wrestle with nobody who's smaller than you. You don't make nobody do nothing that they don't want to do just because you want to do it. Like, that is not cool. And I remember we were playing, and I was glad to find out I'm not the only one who thinks like that, because when my son was playing Pee-wee football, one of his teammates was one of the best kids on the team. Not the biggest kid, but a good sized kid. So he didn't have to worry about being bullied. But I believe one day they were out playing, and he kind of started to roughhouse a kid that was smaller than him. He started to take advantage of a kid that was smaller than him, and his dad came out of nowhere so fast and came down on him so hard that I was like, golly, what did he do? And then somebody else said, he was over there roughing up little so-and-so. And I was like, that's a good call on Pop's part, because you don't want your kids to be abused, but you also don't want them to be abusing other kids either. So when I had seen that, and that had just stuck with me, because these bullies are coming from somewhere, and if parents are able, you got strong parents that are able to kind of look at it and stop it, then they should. And that's just less bullies. That
was big for him to do that. And because that feeling, and so I guess it's kind of like power and greed and anything else that you can consume in large amounts. I'm pretty sure that, I can say that it's possible that he could have liked that feeling of, and that cares for him throughout his life. So
Yeah.
if his pops was to jump on it immediately so he can understand from a moral standpoint, we don't like that.
Yeah.
That's very big, and hopefully his son could do the same thing when he, gets in school and all that stuff.
I think it also kind of goes back to some stereotypically, like way back in the day, some fathers were okay with their sons being overly aggressive like that, especially when you're playing sports like football. Like you want them to be tough because you don't want no weak son or anything like that. So you want your son to be aggressive and take charge. But when it comes to just tormenting somebody for no reason, that's different versus being aggressive for the sake of the sport and then just doing it for your own fun and amusement. Like there's a huge difference. But
and I should clarify that the kids were like out of equipment after a game, just hanging out. And he was kind of like roughhousing a little kid, and that's when his dad.
But then, how can you tell the difference between accidentally tormenting someone and then just trying to have fun with them at the same time? Because after football practice, they're still pretty energetic, they're still pretty hyped up, they're still pretty, bouncing off the walls and stuff like that.
You would be kids know the power difference. I don't say they develop a hierarchy, but you kind of know who is in your league physically and who is not. Like they know, and even the coaches know, the parents who are around know, because especially when they play sports, they become so much more cognizant of their bodies, their strengths, their weaknesses, how fast they are, how fast they can run, and
that's when that competition comes in. A competitive instinct is like who can do what the best out of all of us.
Yes, and they also know who they should not be competing with and who they should be competing with. In Nashville and Tennessee, the leagues are in two age groups. So there's 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, 7-year-old and 8-year-olds. Most often the 8-year-olds are going to be competing amongst each other. You may have a few 7-year-old standouts, and then you're going to have some 7-year-olds who lag behind. If you are an 8-year-old standout, you should not be competing with a 7-year-old who is lagging behind. Right. And you can kind of spot that immediately. Like, so the kids know immediately, like, he's one of the smaller guys. I should not be roughhousing him especially outside of pads and equipment and practice and outside of like an adult supervision. They were doing this as kids, not assuming that people were watching.
Okay, I see.
And that's a good part of that question also is that what his pops did was teach him how to I guess inadvertently understand emotional cues. Because we can roughhouse all day, but as soon as I start crying or I start hurting, I'm like, stop, and you keep going. Then that means that you're enjoying, taking advantage. And also, because it goes from it's past the competition now, because you won. So if you were to get a prize for winning, you would have gotten a prize. So why are you still here? So if his dad's here to kind of bring up somebody, to help him hopefully identify with the emotional cues on when to recognize someone isn't on the same level, or as far as that back and forth playful banner or whatever that they're roughhousing or whatnot. So that's something.
And it goes back to the point you made earlier. Just because you can doesn't mean that you should. Right. And I think that's an important lesson to teach all of our kids, our boys and our girls, is just because you can do a thing doesn't always mean that you should do it.
Right, exactly.
So with that, we'll go ahead and end this particular episode of A Poor Excuse for a Podcast. Thank you all for coming out. And once again, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Peace.
How long did that last?
Z flight.
On the beat. Shout out A Witness. I
I got these niggas screaming who that like I'm playing for the Saints. When I was 12 I wanted me a chick as bad as Ashley Banks, and I get so damn trippy in my mind I can't escape, because if she the type of one to smoke and drink until she faint, I'm gon' be the type of one to roll up weed and pour a drink. And if she tell me that she love me, I might fuck around and fall for it. Instead of one big shot, baby, you can just take 2 small spoons. And she said that she all for it. Got friends, bring them all aboard. Damn it, I'm the man, I got weed in my hand. And if you really about the life, then I'ma let you blow it. Flight in the back, I got weed, got stacks. If you really about the life, then I'ma let you blow it. One of them places, don't know where I'm going. Going in circles, so this perp I'm blowing. Sip a little lean just to change my motion. Shotgun exhale out your nose. Damn it, look good from my point of view. I know that you with it by the things you do. She a bad bitch, got a mean walk too. I just hope you want me like I want you. Team getting plenty. Pussy ass niggas, I done seen too many. Real ass niggas, I ain't seen too many. Except for my niggas and your ass ain't winning. I'm just tryna find me a freak. Nigga need 1 7 days of the week. All we do is chill, smoke, fuck, drink, sleep. And if I ain't high, then I can't eat. When she puts it up and then she catch a couple Z's. Right before she blessed me like a nigga just needs. We a cool, not a clan, but a team for my dream. Need a house in Brentwood and a bitch overseas. And if I let my do coke, smoke trees. Saying boo nigga don't wear blue jeans. Gold niggas gon' dig, cold niggas gon' live. Old niggas gon' get experience. Feel flip work like I work at a gym. Really, that's my cousin, nigga, get it how you live. Motherfucker, bitch, tell me how you feel. Nigga gotta eat, nigga, get it how you live. But I'm on that with the killers, cause I only smoke kill. Caught out this white here, cost 2 light bills. 2 light years, yeah, nigga, I'm ahead. Till they get a high, then I tell her give me head. Till I buy, get the fuck up on my bed. Nigga, that's right, yeah, you heard what I said. Nigga, just really, I'm just tryna find me a free. Nigga need 1 7 days of the week. Really, I'm just tryna find me a free. Nigga need 1 7 days of the week. All we do is chill, smoke, fuck, drink, sleep. And if I ain't high, then I can't eat.